Welcome back to Timo's Dinky Detailing. Today I'm going to be doing a Dinky 260 telephone van. It also says post office. It's a strange British thing, I suppose. This is a beautiful toy that I picked up from somebody off of Kijiji, and it's in pretty reasonable shape but very play worn. The ladder on the top is bent all out of shape. What you can't see here is the base is all distorted. So we'll have a look at that. You can see when I rock the van, the wheels stay in place. That's because somebody seems to have tried to pry the base off, and it's bent out of shape, and so it's going to have to be straightened and flattened. It's quite loose on there. Generally, a bunch of scratches, needs new paint. So as usual, I start by taking the base off. There's only the one rivet. It's the license plate hook on the back that holds the back on. So my usual thing is to, well, become my usual thing, is to put it in the milling machine in the vise. I put the foam around it and it sits on a custom wooden block to protect the model from damage. So first I center it up and go in with the center drill, and here's my beautiful 3/8 drill. Magnificent drill. That's a perfect application for it. That takes the head off perfectly, and there the base is off. So now I'm going to drill the post and tap it. So I go in with the center drill and now with the tap drill, and I put a little bit of cutting fluid, which is basically oil, and it helps keep the alloy that these toys are made from sticking to the drill bit. Okay, now I put in my 440 machine tap. This is an Osborne Blue Wizard tap, and it's a machine tap. It has a spiral point, so it pushes the swarf in front of it. You don't need to back off these taps. Now here's another one where I've ground the end off so that it cuts the thread deeper. You can't use this one first time because it doesn't have a taper. It has a little bit of the spiral point still left. So that's deep enough. It's a long post, so it's not hard to get very deep. And I put in my 440 button head cap screw. So that's ready for the next step. So I got to get that ladder off, and it's held like a tin toy. It just has these little tabs that go through, and then they're twisted to hold them in place. So it's very simple to take it back out again, just straighten out the little tabs. So that's super easy. So there we have the casting all by itself. And now we'll take the wheels off. I mean, my method, I have to straighten the sheet metal because I need to push out the axle shaft a little bit so that I can file down the mushroom that was done in the factory on installation. So it's the smaller mushroom. I try to leave as much material as I can so I can just barely take the wheel off. So you can see there's a little bit larger end. It's because it makes it easier when I have to reform the end of the axle. So now I've got a very twisted, very bent up base. So that's going to have to be straightened somehow. It looks like somebody tried to pry the base off of the toy and maybe came to his senses and realized he's bending the base of his toy all to pieces. So a little block of wood, put it in the vise. And the problem with squeezing in the vise is you're going to bend it a certain amount, but it's going to spring back a little bit. So ultimately, to get the metal to stay, you got to hit it with a hammer. The hammer strikes, bend it further, and then it springs back into the straight position. So that's why you see people hammering these things. They hammer bodywork as well, same reason. This is a hammer I made when I was a toolmaker's apprentice. So now all these little wings and the holes for the wheel tabs, they're all bent out of shape. So I've got these, my little parallel pliers, the jaws open and close parallel, and I ground the teeth off of them because I find this is a great tool for small sheet metal parts, and I use it for all sorts of things. It's just a fantastic little pair of pliers. No idea where you would get another pair. So it starts looking pretty straight now. Test it out on the model. It's a little bit tough to get it in. It's a bit too wide now, so I'm going to have to somehow bend those little flanges deeper in. It's got an interesting shape. It's all bent, so there's like a trough through the middle, but then it's got these little wings that stick up and then they're bent down to fit the bottom. It's still pretty tight in there, so there's always some way to fix it. My little pliers won't do it, but I put it on the vise, give it a little squeeze. That bent the bottom a little bit. I think I straightened that out again later, but at least I had those wings fitting into the casting. So now I'm going to match up the paint to the original paint, and unfortunately I have only a light green and the blue. So I take some time to mix the green to get the same dark green color that matches the model. I found in this process I used a little too much blue, and I wound up having to then counter that with yellow, because it started being a bluish green, and the original green is quite greeny, but it's darker, so black is what brings it darker. So here I'm putting blue in again, and I'm just making it worse. It has a blue tinge to it now, which is very frustrating. But I pulled out the yellow paint, put tons of yellow in there. Still not right. So here, spent a little bit of time, and you can see a little bit of paint on the back of that side, and it looks like it matches so perfectly you can hardly see it. So I put some thinner and some leveling thinner. That's the slow drying one that lets the paint look shiny after it dries. And my paint is ready. So now I'm taking the wheels off, or the tires off of the wheels. They're fairly soft, so it's not really difficult to take them off. And they're in very good shape. They haven't been worn out through play. Even though the model was scratched up quite a bit, the tires stood up very well. So here I'm ready for stripping paint. So outside we go, and I put my boiling water through the kitchen kettle. I really should use a different kettle rather than getting the one from the kitchen. My wife doesn't like that too much. So after a couple of minutes, paint is all off, and as usual the base not so much. That's because the base is blued, not painted. So you can see quite a bit of paint got left over. I'm still learning how to do the caustic soda. Maybe just leaving it in a little longer is all I need to do. But in the end, I can brush what's the remains off quite easily. And somehow the caustic soda takes off the bluing as well. I'm told it's bluing, and probably it's bluing because it doesn't react at all to paint remover. But it does come off in little flakes, so I'm not sure. Now I've used the brass brush, and my brass brush is worn out, so in the set I got from the dollar store there was a steel one, and I find the steel one works great. There's a little blemish on the hood. The base looks great now, and the wheels are stripped beautifully, so I'll have to polish those up a little bit. For the hood, got my glazing putty. This is for big cars, but I find it works just fine. For these ones, I haven't bought any hobby putties. I can't figure out which one to choose, but I keep using the stuff for the real cars. So for the base, I like to put semi-gloss paint. This one is a Rust-Oleum from a hardware store, and I like the finish I get. You paint it on till it's shiny, and then it dries to a semi-gloss and looks gorgeous. Now the primer I'm using here is a self-etching primer. The self-etching primer is supposed to etch into the metal so that it holds better. I can't say that I find that it holds any better than any other primer, but in this case it was handy that the primer is also green, so it's nice when I'm going to be painting it green to have a green base on it. Makes the paint a little bit thicker. So that was the other side of the wheels. You got to wait for them to dry, flip them on the jig, and paint the other side. So here's the primer. You can see all the details, and the casting is in excellent condition. There's really no damage other than that little casting flaw. And now I'm going to leave the primer for the main part of the body, and I'm going to paint the roof and the front grille with the semi-gloss black. I'm pretty sure that the original had a semi-gloss roof. This is the tape from Tamiya. It's the white plastic flexible tape. I like to use this stuff because it seals very well and it peels off. It's not perfect for every application, but many of them it's just great. It also tends not to pull the paint job off as much as the paper tapes do. The glue is maybe a little less aggressive. There are places where I can't use that stuff. It doesn't want to bend on sharp corners too well. So there, I taped up the rest of it with ordinary household masking tape and into the spray booth. That's the roof, and then we get the grill. The grill on this was black, and I think it suits the vehicle really well. So taking the tape off, I wind up with a primer painted toy with a black roof and a black grill. And there was no overspray. It was perfect. Now back to taping. This time, a couple of days later, the paint has dried, and now I've got to tape up the paint. This is very tricky because there's a ridge on that roof line that's tiny, and you have to bend that tape into it. I think if I didn't tape it properly, probably I didn't tape it properly, but you don't even notice it because even though there's like a sticking up bit of panel, you don't really see that the paint isn't perfectly on the corner. The front grille is a challenge to tape, so I wound up cutting the tape to the right shape to get around those top corners and bottom corners. So now it's ready for the final coat. I test my airbrush pressure and the paint settings for the needle. One of these days I'm probably going to buy myself a fancier airbrush because I'm finding there's things that I see people doing on on YouTube with these toys that I can't do with this one. And I think the limitation is the cheap airbrush. It doesn't give me enough settings, and so I'm using a low pressure, so I'm having to be very close to the model all the time. I mean, it's working okay for me, but I'm starting to feel like I would do better if I had a better airbrush. Anyway, the paint's going on beautiful, and it goes on nice and glossy. Just incredible. And I've nailed that color just perfectly. So that's the body, and now the wheels. Again, the wheels, there's two halves. With my setup, I can only paint one half at a time. I've seen other people will stick the wheels on a wire, but I have to wait overnight, at least overnight, and then flip these. You can see they're each sitting on a little pad of non-stick baking paper, parchment paper, so that even though the paint might still be a little bit sticky on the other side, it doesn't stick to that stuff. So here we go. How did this turn out? Came out just beautiful. Let's see the front grille. Absolutely perfect. So, wheels are dry now and the base is dry. We'll put those tires back on. I always put the wheel onto the axle because you can hold the thing better and get more leverage on it. Never had much luck doing it without the axle in place. But I think that's a tip for anybody who's putting these things back on, is put it on the axle. It's a lot easier to handle. So now I'll put the axle, the wheel back on to the base and clip it on with my customized vice grips and to the vice and my little hammer. Then to clean up the mushroom that I've created, I used the hammer drill with my special tool that has a little cup in there, and that smooths out the hammered part of the end and makes it look a little bit more tidy and more like original mushroom. So there, my mushrooms are done. Clean it up, and now the wheels, they look a little bit grayish because the rubber is normal wear. So to darken them up, I'm using Meguiar's tire shine or whatever. There's other versions, and my son has 3 different versions, and he says this one is the best one. The other ones tend to damage the rubber. So I recommend the Meguiar's. It came out beautiful. So now time for the decals. Now I had trouble with the original crown decals. They were so small and very delicate, so even though I bought 2 sets, I had 4 decals, I spoiled 3 of them. So what I'm doing here is an experiment. I scanned the crown decal, and I got clear decal paper, and I put first the white, just a blank white one. Somebody had suggested it on a YouTube video that you could paint the model and then put a clear decal over top of it. And I thought, well, I have a lot more control if I use a piece of white decal paper. I tried using just the paper, but I found it's too flimsy. I had to paint it as if there was a printed image on it. I think it came out really excellent. Maybe I could do better in the future, but I think it looks awesome, and I can see that I will be doing other decals this way. So the decal for the door is a little bit more straightforward. One thing I've figured out is that I pull the decal off of the paper using a Q-tip, and I push it on while it's on the paper. What I did before was I would get it off and then I would hold the decal down with a Q-tip or my finger on the model. But once I pulled the paper out from underneath where I was holding it to the model, it had already stuck itself down and became stubborn. So this is a technique that's working out a lot better for me. And also, you might notice some bubbles there. I put a little bit of soap in the water. I haven't found that advice from anybody except a friend who does model railway work, and that's what he suggested. You have to use a little tiny bit of soap. I may try another time without soap, but I found that I haven't had any trouble when I do use the soap. You can see I'm doing the door while I'm waiting for the white part of the crown, the background of the crown, to dry. And so then the last part left will be to put the transparent crown decal on top of the white background. Okay, that's speeded up a bit, but it's actually quite simple. It's just a matter of getting enough water off so that the decal will stick in the right place. It looks pretty good, and it looks even better once it dries, and then I can wipe off the excess around the decal, because there's excess glue that comes out, but it just comes off with water. So now detailing the rear lights on this van and on some other models I've found. They're typical from the 40s, that they had tail lights with this D shape, and I found online what they look like because I could found somebody selling these things, I guess for restoration of an old car, and it's basically chrome with red lenses. So now I'm using the nail painting brushes, tiny little brush to paint these tiny little features. These brushes are made for pulling lines. So if you're decorating some lady's fingernails, you can draw lines that are perfectly straight. Not too many details on this one. I love this lock on the back. The lock is it's a staple and hasp and a big padlock hanging down from it. Now this ladder is in rough shape, and I was thinking, okay, I'm going to bend it straight, but nah, I bought a new one from Steve Flowers, and the opposite thing now. Put the ladder in and twist these little sheet metal tabs. And the ladder is there now. So now I take off my screw, which has protected the threaded hole, and the screw got painted the color of the body, which is nice. And that always looks good on the bottom. I think it looks fabulous. And it's a screw, so you can take it off again if you need to make some change. So one more bit of detailing. It just really screams out for a license plate. So this time I'm using a white on black license plate. And again, I have to put a white background. So it's actually very difficult to get the white background to sit there. And something happened to the bottom of the decal. It got torn or stretched or something in the process. And I kept working on it, and I may have, I don't know what happened there. But anyway, it came out okay. I got it straight. And when I went to put the license plate on, it's a little too thick for the license plate. So a little white line shows on the top. But I got the white line to be so perfect, it just looks like it belongs there. So I just left it there. So here's where we started out. The toy is play-worn, chipped up. It's a very pretty model. I love the shape of this little van. And that's the sort of thing, if I lived in the UK, I'd look for one of these, and then I would restore it and drive it in parades or something. It's beautiful. So let's see what it looks like now. So you can see the letters on the decals are a little bit shorter than the ones that were on the original model, but it doesn't matter, it still looks beautiful. I have the crown on the side that it never had when I got it, so obviously those ones got rubbed off at some point. Tires are shiny, it has a beautiful license plate and a brand new ladder, and when I look at this I think, what child must have just loved this thing when he got it for a birthday present or something in the 40s. Just an incredible little toy. So I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed doing this model, and please like and share and subscribe. I need to get those subscriptions up, and so please don't neglect that. The way you get more cool videos is you subscribe to the makers who are doing these things, and then we keep making more of them. So until next time, be seeing you.